The NHL is absolutely terrified of the Carolina Hurricanes as they've made a plethora of great moves over the last few days, and they still have a ton of cap space to work with. We're going to break down exactly what these moves are and why the Carolina Hurricanes could be the best team in the NHL next season. We're going to break it all down in this episode of Hat Trick HQ. But before we do that, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 72% of you who watch these videos are not subscribed to the channel. So if you want to stay up to date with everything that's happening with the Carolina Hurricanes, your favorite team in the NHL, and of course the NHL itself, go down below, hit that free subscribe button, because this is the place to be for all your daily NHL content. But KC, the Carolina Hurricanes have been pretty busy. Not as busy as some other teams, but they've been making some quality moves and some big moves. We know that they lost a lot of players off the back end. That was something that we've covered on the channel. That was something that everybody knew was coming. And obviously Brent Burns just signed with the Colorado Avalanche, so he's gone. Orlov is now gone to the San Jose Sharks. We knew that they had to retool their defense a little bit, and they did that in a big way by acquiring Keandre Miller from the New York Rangers. A big two-way defenseman. We'll get into the specifics of him in a second and the trade. But what do you make of this trade? We'll start there because this was clearly the biggest move, especially on the back end for the Hurricanes. And they still have a ton of cap space to work with. But, you know, adding a defenseman like this onto a team that already has a big defenseman, is known for their defense, I mean, this just seems like a good move for the Hurricanes.
Yeah, I love this move. I've been a big Keandre Miller guy ever since he came into the league. I'm always a fan of those two-way defenseman type players, and that's exactly what you're getting with Keandre Miller. Maybe his talents might have been overshadowed a little bit with the Rangers, I would think, with the defense core that they've had there during his time there. But this guy is a stud defenseman. He's going to go in every night, battle for you, whether it's taking a big shot from the blue line, whether it's taking a puck in the shin or in the chest. This guy is going to go out and put everything on the line to make sure that you come out with the win. And I think that's what they need. Obviously, a little bit of a younger guy, too. So, you know, there's still a little bit of development. Or, well, I mean, he's more into the prime of his career right now, but he still has potential to get even better since he's a younger player in the league. And I think coming into a situation like Carolina, where there are a lot of younger players there, will really suit him better. And I think his game will definitely see a spike in his game this year, just from the chemistry he's going to have with a lot of these younger players.
Absolutely. And you could take a look at this. It is a younger defense core all of a sudden, right? You got Nikishin on there as well, who looks fantastic, by the way. When we did see him in the playoffs, it looks like he's going to fit seamlessly into this lineup and be a great young player on the D core for years to come. And they locked up a lot of other guys too. I'm going to get into some of the contracts in a second because they've pretty much solidified their team. There's still a couple moves they can make. And, you know, I brought it up at the beginning. They have $18.2 million in cap space still. They can go out and get a superstar if they wanted via trade because, of course, the free agency market, it pretty much dried up before it even opened, to be honest. I didn't expect a lot of these guys to re-sign with their former teams, including a guy like Brock Besser. And I feel like the Hurricanes and some other teams were prepping to sign some of these free agents, have all this cap space, and now none of them hit the open market. I do want to get into one last thing on Keandre Miller. This is from Mike Rupp, who covers the New York Rangers, and he actually said that Keandre Miller has top 10 defenseman potential. He could be a top 10 defenseman in this league. Now, this is a guy, you know, you're adding him to a defense core who obviously has Tim Gleason in it, who's, you know, there working with the defenseman as a skills coach. You have a lot of other really good, like the best defensive defenseman in the league, by the way, on the best contract, and Slavin there as well. So he's going to be behind a guy like that now, which I think will serve him well because he was the guy in New York. So any final thoughts on Keandre Miller in that regard? Because, you know, do you think he could be a top 10 defenseman in this league? He has all the tools. I'll say this, as somebody who covers the New York Rangers, he has all the tools, but as a 26-year-old, he hasn't been able to put them all together yet.
Yeah, I definitely think the potential's there. Like, it's just, I think under the bright lights of New York, I mean, New York, it has one of the most brutal medias that there is in sports. I mean, you're talking about the Knicks, the Rangers, the Jets, everybody, you know, it's the mecca of sports entertainment in the world. So while you're playing there, you are under a very tight microscope. So now getting out of that and going into a place like Carolina where maybe it isn't as heavily covered, it is still covered, but not as big as, you know, being an MSG and playing under the bright lights, I think will alleviate a lot of pressure off of his shoulders. And I think he's going to love it. I think he's going to find his game here and really click into gear. And like you said, he could easily be a top 10 defenseman in this league. And playing behind a guy like Jacob Slavin and learning from him is only going to help this guy as well.
Absolutely. And I think, when you take a look at the trade itself, just to wrap this up in a bow, you're giving away Scott Morrow, who's a big, good, offensive, smooth skating, offensive defenseman in this trade, as well as a first round pick and a second round pick. So pictured here, I mean, you don't have your first round pick anymore next year. You don't have your second round pick. So you gave up a lot of draft capital and a great young defenseman. But for this Carolina Hurricanes team, it does make a lot of sense because their defense looks a lot better with Miller there. But the fact that Miller's making 7.5, I think you're really taking a bet on him here that he will play really well in that role, because it's a lot of money. But of course, the salary cap's going up, and if you're the Hurricanes, you have a ton of salary cap space. But Casey, I wanted to get into this as well. They made some other signings. You can see here, pictured in the lineup, of course, it's going to be the same two goaltenders, but they made a depth goaltending signing just in case there are some injuries. And we know, love Frederik Andersen, right? But there has been some injury problems the last couple of years, not just injury, but health problems. So you have to consider that as well. They signed Caden Primo to a 1-year league minimum contract. Any thoughts on that? First of all, they've also signed Tyson Jost and a couple other guys that we'll get to in a second. But any thoughts on that? Because I feel like there's a real chance he sees NHL minutes this season.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a Montreal Canadiens fan, so I know Caden Primo very well, and I'm sure if you've been watching the channel for a while, you know my feelings on Caden Primo. I'm not the biggest fan of this guy's play. I don't think he's an NHL goalie. I'm sure he's a great guy, but I mean, he's got AHL starter written all over him. I think whenever he's seen time in the NHL, we've seen his weaknesses, and they get exploited by every single team. And I don't think he's an NHL goalie. If there is a situation where Carolina is down a goalie and they need Caden Primo to play some big minutes, you're gonna have to say a lot of prayers. That's definitely the case.
Well, it's an interesting depth signing. Of course, it's league minimum, so I guess and it's only 1 year, so it's low risk in that way. And I do imagine he's gonna see some time, but hopefully the defense can weather the storm a little bit in that regard. But of course, we saw on July 1st, Logan Stankoven also got a contract extension. 8 years at $6 million for, a 22-year-old who looks great in this league. Obviously, came over in the Mikko Rantanen trade. What do you make of this signing? This is tidy business, I think, from Eric Tulsky to get this guy, especially with the salary cap going up, get this guy, a young, promising talent who's still very young and figuring out the league. Honestly, he looks great, but he is still figuring out the league, to an 8-year contract extension at only $6 million.
Yeah, I like this guy. I mean, to drop some Newfoundland slang on you guys, I mean, the arse kind of fell out over for the Carolina Hurricanes at the trade deadline when Rantanen went to Dallas, but they made the best of that situation and brought Stankoven over here. I've been a huge fan of this guy since his time with the World Juniors and Team Canada. He was so good in that tournament, and since then, he went to Dallas, tore it up in the AHL, moved up into the playoffs last season, and had a really good postseason. And now we're seeing him in Carolina do the same thing. He's been impressing there, has been really showing that potential, and I think he's going to get there. I think this guy has top 6 upside written all over him. He could even be getting top line minutes by the end of this contract. I think $6 million is a steal for this guy, and we're going to see a lot of big things come out of Stankoven here in Carolina.
Absolutely, and he's another great example of a player who is a little bit smaller in stature, but plays a lot bigger than he actually is, and that's going to be a big thing for the Carolina Hurricanes. And obviously, earlier this season, we know Nikishin is signed to a 2-year deal at $925,000, and of course, they re-signed Taylor Hall as well, so that's another piece to the puzzle for this Carolina Hurricanes team that looks like it's starting to take shape. But I think the most interesting thing here is, if you look at the top 6, you got Blake up there. I'm not sure if that's a recipe for success. And then you're looking at the rest of the lineup. It is, pretty filled out, but they do have some room for improvement, I think. And they have almost $19 million of cap space still. So any final thoughts, Casey, on, maybe anyone that they could add? Or I know, it's probably going to have to be via trade at this point, but it's a great thing to have flexibility in terms of your cap. And if you do want to add a superstar, you can do that and more.
Yeah, there's a lot of big names still floating around the trade market. I know Vegas wants Rasmus Anderson, so maybe they're going to be looking to ship some cap out, maybe Carolina's way in this instance, maybe getting a guy like Thomas Hertl. That's what I'm looking at, but that's a very, way out there situation. But I think Carolina is going to be fine here. I think this is a team who's always in the mix come playoff time, and they're just one piece away from being a Stanley Cup champion team. And I really like what they've done so far. And like you said, with $18 million, they can still add a big superstar. And I do expect we will see that by the end of this offseason.
Absolutely. And, there's multiple reports that not only the Hurricanes, but multiple other teams their off seasons are actually going to linger into August this off season because, you know, they're waiting for a guy like Ehlers to sign, which, by the way, Ehlers haven't even mentioned yet. Could be a possibility. He's not necessarily rumored to go to Carolina anymore. That was really hot when the offseason started, but not necessarily right now. But that is still an option. And once he signs, then things will really open. The floodgates in terms of trades and different moves will open. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But let us know what you think about all these moves that the Hurricanes have made. It seems like the NHL should be pretty terrified of this team. They have so much flexibility to go out and make themselves better, and they're already a very, very good team. So let us know how you feel in the comments. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything going on in the NHL.